Welcome back to the Amazon Fanatics program. I am Justin Simon. I am your host here every week as we talk to the biggest names and smartest people in e-commerce. If you have been playing in this space at all, or if you're interested in playing in this space, then I have a win for you this week. I've been so excited about finally being able to talk to our guest today. He's an Amazon bestseller. He is the founder of FindSpotter.com. He is also behind the software ClearPlatinum.com. That's C-L-E-E-R. And you'll be able to learn more by going to ClearPlatinum.com. His name is Jordan Malik, and you'll want to follow his blog. You'll want to follow his podcast, and as you can see, he's got one hell of a smile. He is Jordan Malik, that's Malik.net. He is the author of 5 books on e-commerce. My favorites are among How to Buy Low on eBay and Sell High on Amazon, and I really just love that because the acronym is BLESHA, and, well, how often do you get to say BLESHA when you're doing a podcast? And my other favorite of his is You See a Plush Bunny, I See a Money Honey. And we're going to talk a little bit about that later on, about how you find product where you wouldn't even think, or things that you don't think necessarily have value that do. That's really Jordan's expertise. He's been mentioned in Time Magazine, in the Wall Street Journal, CNBC, and a dozen others. He is an expert in not necessarily retail arbitrage, but Amazon arbitrage. So, Jordan, I want to first thank you for coming on the show, but tell us a little bit about how you got started and your backstory.
I started a lot of it came out of a lot of selling online came out of quote unquote tragedy. Not tragedy is the wrong word, but I got laid off. Well, I had to dissolve my own company. I had a high-tech company a good almost 20 years ago. That's how I kind of experimented, started selling on eBay because I had to liquidate our equipment as part of the bankruptcy proceedings. But the real momentum came in 2009 or 2010 when I was fired. I was kind of dabbling and selling on Amazon on the side and selling on eBay on the side. And I worked at the world's largest ad agency called Omnicom in New York City. And it was one of the worst jobs you could probably have online advertising because I was managing the pay-per-click ads for a pharmaceutical company that was the client. And that's about as dry as you can get. You're limited to letters A through E, and the rest has to go through FTC regulations. So, I got laid off, I got fired 2009, 2010, and I said I was always kind of jumping. I was always kind of entrepreneurial spirited, so I wasn't a career company guy. And I just said to my wife, I said, I'm just going to try to take this Amazon thing full time, and that's what we did. And it started. It started in a very modest, kind of humble way where my father-in-law was driving me around. I started selling used books on Amazon, and he was driving me up and down Long Island, New York, where I lived, to all the public. It was 80 some odd public libraries in all of Long Island and part of the borough or something, the Queens borough or New York City borough. And I was sourcing used books and selling them and doing quite well. And the money was particularly back then. I mean, today it's still lucrative. Used books are still lucrative. It's not as lucrative as it was back then, but that was kind of planted the seed where I was bringing home, a few hundred books a week, and we were making the equivalent of annualized. It was probably $60,000, $70,000 just that alone, kind of on a part-time basis, and that kind of planted the seed for me, and it kind of snowballed from there.
Well, it's interesting you say, because we hear a lot of people say, we get into this part-time not thinking that we can actually make a living out of this. And then suddenly the money starts to come in. You start doing the numbers and you go, well, wait a minute, there's something really here. What was that tipping point moment for you?
I had done a video, it's probably still on there on YouTube, where I calculated my profit per month, and it was I forget the exact number, per 2 weeks. I think it was $2,000 or $1,000 for 2 weeks, and that was the tipping point where it just didn't make sense. It made partial sense to go back, and because I had received my MBA, and I was entertaining 6-digit figure jobs, but I was also working when I was working those jobs or entertaining those jobs. That was you're talking about an 80-hour a week job. So both my wife and I are kind of cut from the cloth. We don't like to answer to anybody. We don't hold jobs very long. So we kind of weighed out the pros and cons. And I knew, no other Amazon seller in my shoes will admit this, but the information part, which anybody can do if you're an Amazon seller and you I've learned something, and you find a way to communicate that, whether it's through an ebook or a webinar or an online course, that is equally lucrative or almost as lucrative as having a full-blown product line on Amazon. So I knew that I was able to, because of my background, I was able to take that information I was learning and say, I'm going to try to create another revenue stream by sharing what I'm learning to others at a very modest price, and that was also kind of like an incentive to get into it.
Well, and if you go to jordanmalik.com, that's M-A-L-I-K, I'm sorry, jordanmalik.net, M-A-L-I-K.net, you'll see Jordan's blog. And, you do podcasts, you teach people, not just what to do, but you show them where you've made mistakes and where you've had problems and what has worked for you and how you've gotten out of them. What are, when you look back in your early days, some of the mistakes you made that you say, okay, if I would have done this differently, it would have turned out better?
Right. That's a good question. Always, I guess the number one, it didn't turn out to be like a huge disaster for me, but I think one of the things is always diversify. So a lot of folks that are out there now that are selling on Amazon, and it's their only source of revenue right now, right? So there's people that got started, maybe they quit their job and they're selling on Amazon full time, and they've got like maybe one product, maybe they did a white label or private label, wholesale, or they just have a variety of products. It's critical that anybody who's doing that starts to diversify your risk, and you can do that in a number of ways. Diversify your revenue streams. You should be knowing other platforms. So if you sell on Amazon already, you should be exploring the eBay platform or Etsy or Craigslist. If you are an expert in something, you should be learning about writing an ebook on the topic, becoming an authority on that. So in the event that something, I call it like the 8-cylinder model. So if all 8 cylinders are firing are great, someday 3/4 of your cylinders may not be firing, right? Rarely people get their Amazon account suspended or put on hold, or rarely people get, they have one product on Amazon that's a white label product from China, and they wake up one morning and there's 12 competitors who've cornered them, squeezed them out of the space. So I guess that would be, it's not really a mistake that I've had a profound experience with, but I've had minor fluctuations where I looked at it and I said, wow, if I'm not diversified across learning different things and outsource, master something and then outsource something. So if you're in the Amazon seller business, and you're selling products and there's routine tasks that you're doing every day, you should be, and you're doing financially well, you should be exploring offsetting those tasks to an outsourced group or a virtual assistant or something as well. So in case something does go down, you're able to pivot and manage other revenue streams for yourself.
You mentioned about 7 different things right there that I want to touch on, just a few of them. You mentioned the other platforms. Amazon Seller Central is a real easy platform to use. There's video tutorials on the site. They're very good at FAQs. Of the other sites people should look at, the Etsy's, the eBay's, some different maybe e-commerce stores, what are the easiest as far as barrier to entry goes for new sellers?
Right. I think eBay's made it pretty simple. If you've ever used their mobile app, for instance, you can now use their mobile app to list a product from scratch. So if you just have your mobile phone and you're in the middle of Guam and you want to sell your handbag, it's actually relatively simple today to do that versus 5, 6 years ago. So I think eBay's made it very simple using their mobile platform. I lost my train of thought. What was the second part of the question?
Which are the easiest, secondary platforms? Assuming Amazon's your primary, but you want to diversify. Where else do you want to look, and what are the easiest to do?
Sure. So I know, the only expertise that I really have is eBay, Craigslist. Craigslist, of course, has gotten very easy as well with the mobile app to list products, but that's like a local classifieds. So Amazon, eBay, and Craigslist are the ones I have knowledge with. I'm sure if you're an Etsy seller, you're selling handcrafted items, that's become very easy to list as well. And those are the majors. Anything that below that, maybe aside from Shopify, but that's really kind of just for your own e-commerce store. Below that, then you're starting to look at marketplaces that have far less traffic. I think the Walmart third party seller platform, or Jet.com, I'm not sure is at the mass critical stage where the average seller can exploit that yet.
Yeah, we've looked at Walmart.com for some of our clients and some of our customers, and it just seems that there's a much higher barrier to entry to be a seller there than there is on a place like Amazon. You can't just go and sign up and suddenly you're selling. You have to prove that you've been a seller of high numbers and a big seller to even be considered.
Same thing with Jet. Jet.com, I don't think won't allow you unless you're certain, during a certain volume, or if you have, I forget the criteria, but it's that, my bread and butter is stuff that most sellers in my shoes would turn their nose up at. It. So used books, used electronics, retail arbitrage, used household appliances, etc., online arbitrage. So I think Jet.com and Walmart.com are probably looking for the bigger sellers. So if you got your own line of coffee, that may work on Jet.com or Walmart.com.
Well, you just brought up used toys, and you also mentioned earlier China. I want to get back to China and content, but you brought up used toys, and again, one of Jordan Malik's books is "You See a Plush Bunny, I See a Money Honey," and in different podcasts, you've talked about the beauty of plush toys and the beauty of used toys, and scouring Craigslist. There are also apps like Close 5 and Let Go. All these places where you can get new and used items pretty cheap that you can then resell. Where are people missing opportunities where they look at it and they think, well, that won't sell? That somebody like you looks at it and goes, oh, there's thousands of dollars sitting there.
Yeah, that's a great point. I talk about this a lot in the podcast and a couple of my ebooks that we live. I don't know if it's just America, and I'm not saying this is a bad thing, but we live as consumers. We live in what I call throwaway economy. So we buy stuff or we get stuff, and we get bored of it, and it's a virtual throwaway to us, because there's also that kind of there's not an efficient marketplace for the homeowner to sell something for the most part, right? It's not the homeowner or renter who wants to get rid of stuff. It's not $100 for this blender and I can get $80 for it. Presto, it's done. It's like they're thinking, I've got to get on Amazon and provide my credit card information, and it's got to ship it, and it becomes a conundrum for them. So that there are folks out there that they're far more prosperous than me, where they've looked at the garage sale model and they've said, gee, we can monetize this even further by like creating a team around it. And the people have done that. People have companies where they have people that go out and they're paid $10 an hour or something, and they're out looking for stuff. But the reason why it's done is the margins are huge. Gary Vaynerchuk is a famous author. Some people watching this may know that. He's a multimillionaire. He has an ad agency. He's got several best-selling books. He's a Wall Street Journal, New York Times best-selling author. He has a video, which I put on my blog, where he said he gets so many inquiries from people saying, how do I make money? Because he's an expert entrepreneur. Sure. And they're like, I need to start making money right away. And Gary, can you give me $10,000? He said, no, I want you to go out this weekend and you're going to go make $1,000 by going to garage sales. And he's dead serious. And at a conference, they were interviewing him at one point where they said, what's the most lucrative space for a beginner to be in, or something like that. And he said, when you hear it for the first time, you almost laugh. He's like, I think the biggest ROIs today are in garage sales. not meaning from the homeowner perspective, meaning the people. And he was only talking about eBay, so he wasn't talking about Amazon. He was just saying, finding stuff at garage sales and selling it on eBay. So I think the stopping point for a lot of folks is A, they don't want to get their hands dirty, and B, in their minds, it's not a repeat. And it's to some degree, they're correct. It's not a replenishable, right? So you can't, it's how do you scale a garage sales sourcing operation? You got to hire people to do that. So if everybody in their Amazon mode or eBay mode is thinking, I need to import 1,000 garlic presses from China and then sell them at $5 a piece, and I'll make a 50 cents profit. But if I can do that 10,000 times, then I'll make 10,000, whatever. But for people that are just starting out, that have no clue where to begin, or they're intimidated by importing or intimidated by doing wholesale, that's where I always tell them to begin, because it's literally the margins are so lucrative, it makes up for the inefficiencies of buying one of this and putting it on eBay and Amazon.
Well, and if you're using FBA, you could just send a big ship, right? So you don't have to ship them one by one, and that keeps your costs down overall. It's interesting. We'll go on Close 5, my girlfriend and I, just to kind of peruse some nights, and new stuff that we know sells for $150, $160 is on there for $30. And we'll say, hey, we'll give you a $20, and they'll say, okay, we'll take it. And then we turn around and you sell it for even $100 if it's a good deal. And that took us, 5 minutes of shopping online and 15 minutes to meet them at the Starbucks around the corner. So it's kind of a no-brainer.
And think about the stuff that people give away. There's the model of going around to garage sales and saying, I'll help you unload, sir, all the items that you didn't sell. And that's what some folks, I know a multi-million-dollar Amazon seller who's doing that. He's sending people out to the garage sales and saying, if you didn't sell the stuff, we'll take it off your hands. They bring it back to a processing center. 75% of it they got to throw out. Right. But the CDs, the electronics, the DVDs, the baby clothing that's still new, the diapers that are still new, incontinence, whatever, and it's free inventory. So right. I mean, how can you do that? And we still do that today. We still experiment with the different ways of sourcing. And my wife went back when we lived in Long Island, New York, about a year ago. She went to a guy that had a big estate sale, and he's like, "Can you just take all these DVDs and books?" We had to throw out 75% of it, but the remaining 25% was like a $700 take or something like that. Right. So it's out there. The stuff is out there.
Well, it was interesting you brought up estate sales. I was listening to some of the podcasts on your site. You mentioned estate sales, and I heard a few weeks ago from somebody that did a similar thing where most of it was junk, but they ended up being able to donate so much to a Goodwill that they got something like $1,000 write-off because it was literally like $15,000 in items. They were such trinkets and small schlock that they couldn't sell it really anywhere. They didn't see profit. But then they took the 30 or 40% that was worth it. They sold that online. They made their money there, and it was like you got a tax write-off and you made money in your pocket. It was kind of one of those win-wins.
Yeah, there's a lot of money in junk, if you want to call it that, and I draw the parallel to when I was growing up and I wanted to own a gas station or something to the effect that I said, I think I'm just going to skip going to college. And that was just like both in my family circle and also peers, like, you're going to go run a gas station. But it's like the people that are doing very well with gas stations, many of them are people that came here from another country. Right. And they recognize, okay, gas station, and it's people need gas and location, and it's real estate, and it's almost a no-brainer. But 99% of any other entrepreneur out there won't touch it because it's a gas station, and the same thing goes for sourcing local used products to resell online.
Yeah, Jordan, that's an interesting question too, because you're the founder of FindSpotter.com. You're involved in Clear Platinum. You started Clear Platinum. And so, as we're getting more into arbitrage, as we're trying to get a feel for what products have value, we're no longer at the stage where you have to go one by one and try to figure out each product. The software is out there. So the question becomes, what software do you trust? Some of them are so expensive that you're not exactly sure, do they have value? And some of them are cheaper. But if you had to pick the software that you look at and say, yeah, that's the one where I'm going to use to determine what I'm going to sell, what softwares would you highlight, or what apps, whatever they may be, browser extensions, and say, yeah, that's the one, if you're going to be a real Amazon seller, that you've got to get your hands on?
The only software that I'm intimate with that I know is my own. It's Clear Platinum. It's Clear with 2 E's, and it's not really a instant tool where it's like instantly going to tell you something. There are other software products that cost 10 times as much that kind of do that. There's so many moving parts to discovery of a product you find online. Say if you're on Kmart and you see a pair of roller skates for $3.99, $3.99, and on Amazon they're selling for $24.99. There's a lot of other pieces of information that you didn't have access to 4 or 5 years ago that now you do to kind of make an educated decision. Just because it's $4 on Kmart, selling for $24.99 on Amazon does not necessarily mean it's the right product to buy or if it's going to sell right away. So the software that I built came out of me one day a few years ago saying, how come I'm looking at this product on Amazon and I'm considering buying it from eBay to flip it from eBay to Amazon? How come I just can't click a couple buttons and just figure that out? Right. And that kind of came out of that need, and I shared a very early version with my subscribers who loved it, and then it became a very advanced, more powerful version. So the only thing that Clear Platinum does is just save you a lot of time in figuring out those 4 or 5 different pieces of information that if you want to make a purchase decision on a product you can buy online. People call that online arbitrage, to buy online to resell on Amazon or eBay, or vice versa. That software kind of it provides a lot of shortcuts to getting to that information. It's a time saver, really, to getting to that information.
And tell us a little bit about what FindSpotter.com does and your FindSpotter software.
Sure. So FindSpot is really not a software. It's a service that you can purchase a monthly subscription. We were the first service to look online at different stores and find products that were selling for significantly higher, like double the price or 80% higher on Amazon than they were on the original website. So if you're a FindSpotter subscriber, you may you'll get an email alert every day, Monday through Saturday, and there'll be like 12 or 14 products that we've discovered that are selling for a significantly higher margin on Amazon that are profitable for you to buy from, say, Kmart or Walmart or Babies R Us or whatever, Toys R Us, to resell on Amazon. And it's not an instant profit machine. People think, oh, it's just a push button. I can just buy these 10 things and I can send them into Amazon. The nature of the beast is now it takes months, right? So you may find a great deal on baby slippers at Babies R Us for $2.99, but you might have to wait 6 months to turn those over at $12 or $14.99. So it's not online arbitrage is not a get rich quick scheme.
Right.
It's actually the FindSpotter service does kind of all the knowledge gathering for you. So as opposed to you starting your day saying, okay, which will take 8 hours, for some folks back in the day it did, to say, okay, I need to go find 13 different products that I can buy and have shipped to my home that I can package and sell on Amazon. Our service kind of does the bulk of the research for you and gathers it in one place so you can make an educated decision.
So we spoke a little bit about software earlier and this type of thing. You mentioned the outrageous prices on some of these things that people are charging. To new
Right.
folks who are saying, hey, I need software, what would you tell them as far as what type of investment to make in that, especially early on?
Yeah, that's a good point. So there's a lot of free what they call browser extensions that a browser extension is it's a little piece of software that's kind of embedded in your browser. So I'm a big fan of the Chrome browser. So many folks that are here that are older are probably used to using Firefox or Internet Explorer. Chrome is the equivalent, but there's a lot of developers like myself that have made little pieces of software, and many of them are free, that you can just do a Google search for Chrome store and when you're in the Chrome store, you can look for Amazon tools, and you'll be presented with a number of different tools that, a good third of them are solid, that have like video tutorials that also may be free or have a free trial where you can go and try them out or use them permanently, and they kind of help cut down on your research when you're trying to figure out where's a good product online that I can buy to resell on Amazon or eBay. So I know Keepa is one, Keepa, shows sales trends of a product during different seasons, the price and the sale, the Amazon sales rank. Camel is another one that essentially does the same thing. Those are the two off the top of my head. So there's a lot of not just software, Chrome extensions, but there's a lot of free information out there as well. So I would, if I was just starting out, I would start there. And there's about 100 different Facebook groups now of other sellers congregating and helping each other out on Facebook. So go to facebook.com and search for like Amazon Seller Help Group, and you may find a group that will be amenable to having somebody come in and ask questions. Hey, how do I get started?
Yeah, we're in a lot of those groups too, and I think the thing that we like about those groups is not a lot of people are proprietary. They're really interested in sharing what they've learned and how you can benefit from their mistakes, and it seems to be a very collaborative community. And so we think that's those Facebook groups and some of the other forums are really great resources. We're talking with Jordan Malik. Go to jordanmalik.net, check out his podcast, check out his blog. Really informative and a different way to approach Amazon, aside from get products from China and throw them up on Amazon. This is a true bargain hunter, old school, if you will. Jordan, when you get started and the sales start to rise, there is invariably going to come a time where the sales slow down and the sales velocity kind of creeps and all that money that you thought was coming in doesn't come in as fast. How do you deal with these slow times, and what can sellers do to protect themselves against those real tough slowdowns?
Yeah, that's a good question. So there's some people that get into a desperate situation where they're literally like they can't even afford the $40 a month Amazon fee to be an FBA seller, and they've got X amount of products. So if you're in a desperate situation, and I hate saying this, but if you're in a desperate situation, and you've got a lot of inventory sitting there, you want to start lowering your prices. And the Amazon seller interface has help tutorials and an easy way for you to figure out how to lower price. It's relatively easy to do. You do not need an external repricer to figure that out. So I always encourage folks that are in a desperate situation, if you're desperate and you need cash, you need to start thinking about liquidating or lowering your prices 5% every few days until you start, or 5% every week until you start selling your product again. So that's one thing. And the other, I guess the bigger answer is that there's folks out there that are no college education, moderate high school education. There's folks that are out there that are making a killing online, whether it's garage sales, selling, finding garage sale products, selling them on eBay, or being Amazon sellers, importing products from China. They're importing wholesale. I know two guys that have a $3.8 million business. They started with a $600 credit card. So there's a way to get out of everything. And I think the only failure in this is when people are starting to just hold themselves back, and they're not feeling it. I'm going to fail. This guy's doing 12 million. I can't do that. I can't even do $100 or whatever. So you got to just stay focused and hunker down and dig your way out. It's the only way to do it. I mean, throwing up your hands and quitting, that should be your last option.
Well, a lot of it's hustle, right? This is one of those games where it is not necessarily talent. Because everything that Amazon selling does can, in essence, be hacked to some extent if you do the research, if you learn it, if you figure out the tricks, and there are ways to, in essence, win the system. I wouldn't say beat the system, because everybody wants to get ahead of it if you put in the hustle.
Right, that's a good point. And 9 times out of 10, the folks that are quitting, that are starting out, they'll go into one store. They'll go into Walmart and they'll go scan the toy aisle and they won't find anything, or they send in one product and they just at their first sign of failure they'll turn around and quit. And that hustle, what you just talked about, is how the other 1 out of 10 say, I'm going to try, that didn't work, but I'm going to try this.
And once again, we're talking with Jordan Malik. Go to jordanmalik.net. He is an Amazon bestseller. He is the author of multiple books on e-commerce. He's the founder of FindSpotter, and he's the man behind Clear Platinum. The fastest way to source online, that's CLEER Platinum. Jordan, if people were interested in starting out and they really, say, come later to 2016, they're really going to launch and they're going to do this. What are the tips? I figure the 3 tips you would give them to say, okay, before you start, make sure you do this, or as you're starting, here are the things you really need to do.
Trends sell. So one of the number one questions I hear all the time is what products. These are the folks that are sourcing from China or sourcing from wholesale. One of the number one questions is, what do I sell? What do I sell? And trends work. So if you see, I'm just going to throw something out there, this, the latest thing in the news, and one of the latest things in the news is the Zika virus.
Right.
As silly as that sounds, my hunch is that mosquito repellents and mosquito netting and products probably going to continue to increase in demand. And with those trends comes added competition. But the trend is your friend, is the phrase. So when people are trying to figure out what do I sell, they instantly gravitate towards something they like. It reminds me of one of the guys that called me for a paid consultation. He needed help, and I said, "What's the problem?" He said, "I have 1,000 bottle openers that won't sell." And I cringe when I hear that, because a bottle opener is I don't know how you get to the decision process for that.
Evergreen and not totally a must-have item. Name
a bartender that's late for work and they say, I need to get my hands on a bottle opener right away. I think I'm going to get that on Amazon. Right. and pay 6 times retail. So that I guess the first tip is the trend is your friend. If you're looking for a product to buy wholesale or in bulk or in China, follow it. I try to identify a trend and test it, because all the software and everything and the information's out there. There's enough out there where during a free trial of the software, like Jungle Scout or what you can figure out enough if this is going to be a product that's going to do well, or at least minimize your risk. The second tip is there's a lot of information overload. So I think before the call started, you mentioned something about the issue with China creating knockoffs, or Chinese sellers kind of unethically squeezing out American-based sellers,
and the counterfeit
hijacking their listings. So there's a lot of information that's out there that's generating knee-jerk reactions from sellers, where they're completely flipping out or pulling the cord or quitting. So you have to. There's no real set of rules, but just like a temperament to be able to just kind of rationalize when you hear these things about your situation. So that don't overreact, I guess, is when you're hearing all these different pieces. There's a lot of sensationalism around this. It's the news media, etc. I guess those are two tips. And I can't even think of a third. So
have your wife help you. Jordan's third tip is have your wife help you as often as possible.
That's well, actually, no. You know what? Wait a minute. That's a good point. Is that there's a lot of sellers that are out there that are kind of creaking under pressure, where they're trying to do everything themselves. I'm one of those as well. And you have to, at some point, if you really want to grow, and I didn't believe this until recently, if you really want to grow, if you're tired of doing 60 grand a year or 30 grand a year, and you want to be at 100 grand a year or 200, you want to be $1 million seller, you're going to have to outsource parts of your business, whether it's sourcing or processing, a third-party fulfillment center to process your inventory for you for Amazon, or your bookkeeping or your research. You have to start letting go and outsourcing parts of your business. That's the only way that you're going to get over the next hump. You can't do everything yourself for the rest of your life.
Well, that's the second time you mentioned a third-party fulfillment center. Talk to us a little bit about what that is and how that works.
Sure. So that's a great question. So the part of the challenge for you as a seller, an Amazon seller, when you're starting out, is you're probably getting inventory, whether it's imported or a wholesale provider, or you're doing retail arbitrage. You're going out to stores to find product, or you're going to libraries to get used books, or you're doing online arbitrage where you're getting stuff shipped to your home, and you got to unpack it and prep it. And the process as an Amazon seller is you need, I'm generalizing, but you got to put a label on it. It's got to be packaged properly, your barcode label, and there's certain steps. So that's a huge time suck. And a lot of smart people said in the U.S., and there's several overseas, said, hey, why don't we open up, since we've got this we have warehouse space or access to warehouse space, let's create a pre-fulfillment center for Amazon. And many people don't just do it, Amazon, they don't pre-fulfill for Amazon, they'll do it for eBay or whatever, where they'll take your products in for you. So if you ordered a pallet of garlic presses, it's a bad example, from China, you can have them shipped directly to a pre-fulfillment center. You have a contract with them. They might be in Oregon, and they will receive them, and they'll say, hey, this is Jordan Malik's 1,000 garlic presses, and they'll tag them for you, and they'll ship them back to the Amazon fulfillment center for a moderate fee, $1 per unit or $2 per unit or whatever. So that I've been talking to some folks that own their own warehouse. They're renting their own warehouse for their own personal Amazon business, and they're like, gee, I wish I never did this. I wish I used a pre-fulfillment center, because the economies of scale are built into that. So they don't have to hire labor to do it. Right. That's really the bottom line. So that's become a kind of a hotbed. There's a lot of them that have popped up. Some are just guys in their literally in their garage, and some are full blown, 100,000 square foot warehouses where they're taking not just products from China or big pallets of goods. Some of them are also saying to people that do online arbitrage, when you buy your products from Walmart, just have them shipped direct to us. Well, we're in Oregon. There's no sales tax here, for instance. I don't know if that's true, but we'll take the products in here, and you won't pay sales tax, and we'll prep them. We'll take the label off, and we'll prep them for FBA for you for $2.10 a unit, whatever. So it's becoming popular for that. And I don't know who they are. There's one fulfillment center that will actually take used books, but I forget their name, and I forget the policy around it. So that's, you're seeing a lot of that, and that's becoming a huge time saver for a lot of folks, as opposed to them receiving everything and peeling stickers. They're sending it directly to the fulfillment center.
Well, that is a huge tip. You are watching The Bald and the Beautiful, the best hairstyles in podcasts right here.
I forgot my wig. Where is it?
Tell me about it. I left mine somewhere back in '94. I want to thank Jordan Malik so much for joining us today. It's been quite informative. Jordan, again, is the author of 5 books, and if you're looking for something to buy and make sure you are ahead of the game in this Amazon or e-commerce game, there are all kinds of good books. You'll be able to find them, but my favorite, of course, being You See a Plush Bunny, I See a Money Honey, if for only the point that I got to say Plush Bunny and Money Honey back-to-back on a few times in this podcast. So make sure you go to his site, jordanmalik.net, and subscribe to his podcast, read his blog. Jordan, before we let you go, what is the kind of singular word of advice you would give to people who are considering starting out in this space and saying, maybe I'll do that if only Jordan were to tell me what?
There's virtually zero risk to start now. I have a page, if I can plug it. It's a lot of free information on it. If you go to jordanmalik.com/resources, jordanmalik.com/resources, it's a blog page, and it's got a whole bunch of resources on there. 60% of them or something are free. So the risk today for you to start is virtually zero. I remember talking to a friend of mine that was in a tough position a few years ago, and he's like, I don't know what I should do. I want to quit my job, and I think I want to start a Subway franchise. And that's how many people think. They say, I'm stuck. I don't know where to turn. This online thing intimidates me, so I'm going to do something that's tried and true, and I'm going to get a bank loan for $250,000 to open up a Subway franchise. I'm going to work 80 hours a week. And it's not a stupid decision. I'm not saying that's like a dumb thing to do. I can understand where that element of fear is driving that. So the risk for you today, if you're considering selling products online, whether it's your own product or a white label product or products from a garage sale, or even what I tell everybody is start in your own house, pick up everything that you don't want anymore, and sell that on Amazon, whether books, CDs, DVDs, etc. The risk today is it's so low.
So we want to thank Jordan Malik so much for joining us. You'll notice there was a slight editing mishap or a slight technical mishap, but that is the situation sometimes. Jordan, you've been a wonderful guest. We hope to see you at some of these seller conferences, and for everybody, you'll see the links to all of Jordan's stuff that we mentioned throughout the podcast listed below. Make sure to go click on them and learn more from him. We certainly do all the time, and we recommend it. It is a great place to start and a great place to continue your online education. So, Jordan, thanks so much for your time, and the best of luck and continued success to you in the future.